Please be advised that this recorded webinar has been edited from its original format, which may have included a product demo and other engagement features. To set up a live demo, please complete the form above on our website. If you currently are not on our website and are watching this on our YouTube channel, there's a link to the website in the description of this video. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The State of Domain Abuse in Australia. My name is Christy DeMeo-Ziegler, and I will be your moderator. Joining us today is Justin Hartland and Peter Scott. Justin is CSE's Global Director of Marketing for the Digital Brand Services Division based out of London. Justin has spent more than 25 years in the domain name and brand protection industry and brings his wealth of knowledge to CSE clients. Peter is a global brand advisor for CSE's Digital Brand Services based in Australia. Through insights, data, and analysis, he helps to advise on how to best protect and secure brands online. He supports clients globally with domain name management analysis, security insights, and .brand trends. And with that, let's welcome Justin and Peter.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, so I am going to start today.
Thanks, Christy.
Hey, Peter. So what we're going to do today is I'm actually going to go through some global statistics, and then Peter's going to look in particular at how it compares to Australia. And every year CSC runs a report called our Domain Security Report, where we look at the Forbes Global 2000 list. And in that list, we look at various domain security aspects, and we compare it against countries, against regions, against various types of different analysis. So what we start with is we look at companies that have an enterprise class registrar, which is like CSC, and a retail registrar or a consumer grade registrar. And what we found with our research is that companies that use an enterprise registrar are more likely to have these different domain security protocols put in place. So as you can see on this chart, registry lock, which is a way of locking down your domain name so that people can't hijack the DNS, significantly higher if a company is using an enterprise class registrar compared to a consumer grade. Again, in all categories, it's significantly higher, DMARC, DNSSEC, CAA records, and DNS redundancy. So, and I'm going to touch on this later on anyway. So, but, usually companies that are using a company such as CSE will have more of these protocols put in place to protect their brands. We've been running this report for around about 5 years now. And if you look at this chart, you'll see probably the one area that companies have really adopted in that 5-year period is DMARC. So it's almost doubled in that period. So it's gone from almost 39% up to just over 70% in the 5-year period. Doesn't surprise me, if you look at all of the email fraud going on, companies are taking this really seriously. They're adopting it, they're implementing this across their entire portfolio. Whereas all of the other sort of areas such as registry lock, CA records, DNSSEC, there's been a slight increase over the years, but nothing significant that we've seen with DMARC. DNS redundancy is the one area that has gone down. I don't know if we might see a reversal of this in the future, and I'll touch on that in a little bit on one of the later slides. But yeah, if you look at this, generally companies are making small gains on this, but apart from DMARC, everything has stayed fairly static for the last 5 years. Then when we look at it based on region, so APAC trails behind other regions, with EMEA showing the largest growth in these domain security adoption. So if you look at examples such as multi-lock, which is registry lock, APAC is significantly down on North America or the Americas and EMEA. Again, same with DMARC, not so much with DNSSEC, but then CAA records and DNS redundancy also significantly down. I think at this point, I'm actually just going to give a quick explanation because I may not everybody might know what all of those 5 different areas are. So registry lock, I just mentioned. DMARC is a way of authenticating email. DNSSEC is, again, it's an authentication through the DNS, which can be put on your DNS records. CAA records is where you can implement this into your DNS. And if you choose to register digital certificates, for example, with CSC, then you would just put us in the record. So if anybody within your organization tried to register a digital certificate with another provider, then it would not be allowed by that provider because they would see that actually the CAA record says you can only use CSC. And then DNS redundancy, what we're talking about here is secondary DNS, so where there's multiple DNS server sets. And, you know, again, this is an area where there has been change because quite a few companies have also started moving to cloud providers where it's a dynamic changing environment. But there are pros and cons to that. What we believe is the future is looking at making sure that you've got redundancy because there's a lot of regulation coming in across the globe, which is going to require that. And it's whether those cloud providers and other providers can keep up with that. And then the final piece, just looking at this Forbes 2000, is we give a domain security score to each of the companies. And what we found was 68% of the Global 2000 have less than half of the recommended security measures in place. So there's still an awful lot of work to be done there. And actually 5% had a domain security score of 0. So even though these are the biggest companies in the world, there is still a lot of work to be done on domain security and ensuring that companies are bringing in all of these various things to add these layers of security to protect their domains. And at the end of the day, it's about protecting your customers. So hopefully that's given you an idea of what's happening on a global scale. And I'm actually going to now pass over to Peter, who's going to start talking through some specific statistics and background on what's happening in the Australian market. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. So yeah, as Justin said, I'm going to take a bit of a look into some updates and trends in Australia around domain abuse. So we'll start with what's sort of happening across Australia. So we're seeing an enhanced threat visibility take shape across Australia now, and this is really seeing the advancing of the regulatory framework. So we're seeing the introduction of the Cybersecurity Act last year. We've seen the introduction of the Scams Prevention Bill framework as well. So the Cybersecurity Act, they're looking to improve ransomware reporting, especially around critical infrastructure. And the prevention bill, the Scams Prevention Bill, sort of aiming to target improved reporting again, but also obligations around what happens when there's scams. We're also seeing, obviously globally, we've seen that the increase in the use of AI, and we're also seeing it within Australia too. So out as reported, 56% of consumers in Australia are using AI, and 64% of small businesses are also using it. So more use of AI than not, essentially. And I've seen an increase in multi-factor authentication, so that's up around nearly 20% over 2025. So that's a really important way, important to see. Also, .au, still one of the most secure domains out there. It's seen some of the lowest levels of DNS abuse globally, and also has some of the most robust licensing rules around who can register. Users are also reporting that they're more aware of scams, a little bit more confident as to how to act when they see them. And also, having said that, you're looking at still nearly 250,000 scams reported in 2024. So this is data from ScamWatch. And these particular numbers, they're not, these are user reported numbers. So I'm pretty sure these would be a lot higher in terms of what they are. So taking a look at some further trends and sort of drilling down into some of that ScamWatch data, looking at around 318 million lost to scams. And these are a slight increase coming in to 2025. These are coming from the sort of investment scams, also there's the romance scams that we've seen, and they're sort of the high dollar value ones. In terms of where we're seeing the most impact, though, it's around phishing. So phishing stands at around 40% of reported scams are related or have some sort of phishing taking place. In terms of contact methods, you're looking at email and text. They're sort of the most common types of contact we're seeing. And then you're going to see domains and within links and URLs. And these are going to be the transport method where you're going to see malware and ransomware sent through. So overall, some data from Aon, cyber incident frequencies up around 29% year over year and 134% over 5 years. So trend in scams and cyber instances are definitely increasing. Some other trends around scams is the increase in the use of AI for scams, and this is pretty big. They're making these scams more sophisticated. You're looking at scraping social media to make them more personal, more convincing sort of fake messages with the near perfect grammar, and the ability to be able to personate some voices. You're seeing deepfake audio and video being used. And AI is also helping to automate the scale, so it's really hard to keep up with. At the core of many of these scams is the use of, again, domains. You find these within links and URLs. You can have lookalike domains, hyphens, keywords, even used within subdomains and subdirectories. So it's pretty tricky for brand owners and even just for users to be able to see, to be able to determine the difference between real ones and these fake URLs. AI is essentially expanding that attack surface. It's a real driving force. We're seeing a 53% increase in social engineering incidents year over year. And social engineering and fraud claims have also increased about 233%. So jump to the next slide. I'm going to take a quick look here at this recent cyber attacks, especially across Australia. We've all heard of the Medibank and Optus and the Qantas attacks. We've also seen attacks, though, on government and universities. Globally, we've seen cyber attacks across some big brands like Facebook, Toyota, Marriott. We've also seen US and UK infrastructure and government services impacted as well. So what's common with these cyber attacks is they're using ransomware and spyware. Ransomware seems to be the sort of the main one there, and it's closely linked to phishing. So phishing's generally, as we sort of mentioned before, that transport method. We've seen it used pre-cyber attack, and it's really taking place also post-cyber attack. So I'll drill into a little bit further. So looking at things like brand launches. So this is a big one. So owners regularly updating brands, introducing new ones or renaming them. And we saw with MyGov last year, the ATO cautioned a lot of Australians to be aware after that brand change, and they had a ton influx of scams reported, and this was from the change from MyGov ID over to My ID. So pretty close looking brand names. So they saw a bunch of scams coming through off the back of that. And they've got the take action, the password resets. So we see the password reset scams come through a lot, but post cyber attack, when users are caught off guard, we've seen that sort of increase in use of phishing. And this is around update your password quickly, take action to secure your account, that sort of thing. So that's catching users off guard. We're seeing rewards programs affected. We've seen fraudsters attempting to deceive customers into redeeming rewards points and clicking on payment details from branded domains. We've also seen prompts to call, common in the banking sector. Many banks reporting this currently with prompts to call via email, and you've also got the suspicious links within those emails. We've seen gift card abuse as well. This one we saw one with Woolies with a fake branded domain, and also phone requests to pay for fines via gift cards. And natural disasters. We had the Victorian bushfires. We saw a number of fake donation pages set up. So these are on branded looking domains. And we also saw something similar around Cyclone Alfred this year. So as a result of these trends, we're seeing brand owners start to set up dedicated warning sites. So they've got education information, warning about current scams, and also just trying to educate users about what to look for. You see these branded looking domains, so it's just making users second guess when they do see them. And you see a lot of these come through in their monthly updates. So let's take a look at the extension abuse landscape. So I've got a couple of tables here. So I've got the top ranking domain extensions here firstly. So I've filtered these to the APAC region so we can see which ones are the most popular. So obviously .com.au and .com at the top there. And this data is based on registration popularity and some popularity from Tranco.com. In terms of the risk we see on in terms of the high extensions, so this data comes from Spamhaus, and we've got this basically shows list of the malicious uses across these GTLDs and CCTLDs, and this is based on phishing, malware, and spam, and it's just the total observed uses over time as opposed to a particular period. So no sort of surprise we see com sitting at the top there, and a bunch of new GTLDs within the GTL space, and in the CCTL space we've got CN at the top and JP, and we also see .au, which is a surprise there in that sort of top 14. So what I did is actually cross-checked these two data sets, and so you can see in that those top popular APAC domains, you can see a lot of those actually also listing across within the high risk extensions. So really important to look out for these types of things within your portfolio, and these extensions are definitely ones to look out for across Australia. Some other trends to look out for, the rise of the Web 3.0. So this is the movement from around blockchains and token-based economies. So that's just shift from large corporations to individual users. And a part of this rise, we've seen the .crypto and the .blockchain domains. They're used for complex cryptocurrency addresses just to replace those. But along with that, we're seeing this sort of abuse of traditional domains also. So you see .coms and .orgs. We're seeing this as a sort of mix of the branded domain with a keyword domain. and had a couple of UDRP cases I found here. So just to confirm, so UDRPs, this is the sort of legal way to acquire these domains back. And saw Instagram NFT.org get back. We saw Tesla-Bitcoin.com and Lego Metaverse.top. So these types of domains are being targeted and used for phishing scams as well. So again, important to consider these across your brand variations within your portfolio. Another update, this one from Google. So this one's around, had a policy update back in 2024. And they did some updates to it again in 25. It's around expired domain abuse. So they did an update, included in this section. They aim to sort of give Google the ability to filter out specific domains from search results, and sort of this is based on repurposed spammy domains. And so what they found is expired domains that basically lapsed. They've essentially got these ones with high backlink counts. These ones are being utilised by spammers and then used within search results. So they're going to try and filter these out. So really important here, I think, for brand owners to be just wary when lapsing domains, especially those with higher backlinks, that these aren't re-registered, used for spam abuse or even phishing, especially if domains, they're recognisable by users already. So I think
Peter,
yeah, Justin.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add on to that. So one of the things we obviously look at the domain names we manage and the domain names we lapse, and over the last few years, it's been fairly consistent. It's roughly about 11 to 13% of the names we lapse for our customers. They ask us to, and we lapse. They get re-registered by third parties. So not only is this, you know, that companies are watching you and watching your domain lists, and they are picking those names up when they see them. And it might be that you think, well, that's a redundant brand or something, but actually they can reuse it for the various reasons Peter went through. So yeah, I think lapsing names is something that you really need to look at very carefully, and not just try and do a job in a spreadsheet. You need to think carefully about the names you do lapse.
Yep, totally agree, Justin. No worries. So I'm just going to jump onto some more data here, and we'll just go through. This is a bit more security data. So how does Australia compare? So I'll just start sort of at the top here. We got nearly 4.2 million domains over the .au space, and this compared to UK around 24 million. But on the other hand, you got 7 million from .fr. So just as a comparison, but yeah, we saw a sharp increase over the last couple of years with that release of .au. So that's really driven up registrations. In terms of dispute cases globally, we've got Australia sits at around 7th in terms of those. ComAU specifically 11th globally in terms of dispute cases as well. And on the security side, DNSSEC adoption at around 6%, so slightly below the global average, and of the brands that we surveyed for this. And you see about half of the Australian top brands that use an enterprise registrar, compared to 56% in the US and 75% in the UK, so slightly behind there in terms of Australia. Let's drill down into the security a little bit further. So this just looks across the regions and the security comparison. So in terms of, this is the top Global 2000 brands. And so we see registry lock there in terms of Australia compared to the US, UK. So it's slightly up on the other regions. DNSSEC slightly behind the other regions. Hosting redundancy sits slightly behind the UK and US also, and a low percentage of Aussie brands using their own DNS when compared to the UK and the US, and US more inclined to use their own DNS. In terms of critical industries, a lot more in those top brands throughout Australia. So it was important. Those critical industries are utilities, banks, telecommunications. I could explain that higher uptick in terms of the registry lock. And we may see that increase even more with those government changes that are coming through that I mentioned earlier around the Cybersecurity Act and Scams Prevention Bill. So we may sort of see more of an emphasis there on securing and locking down some of the core domains.
Peter, sorry, I just want to jump in again. If people may not be aware of this because it's a European Union directive, but there was something released last year called NIS2 directive, and it started in October last year. This is where the best way of looking at it is it's GDPR for security. And they've released this across the European Union, and each country will be adopting it into law. And not everybody has just yet. But one of the things that we think, and that's why I kind of alluded to it earlier when I was saying DNS redundancy was going down and whether it might pop back up, is things like DNS redundancy are areas that they are asking companies in those critical industries to make sure that they have that backup, as well as a number of these other security protocols. And if I look at those numbers, sort of 60%, 70%, it's roughly the same across other European nations or in their top companies. So, you know, Australia is actually quite high, but, you know, they are bringing this in to ensure that critical infrastructure is not abused through the DNS. So sorry, I just wanted to add that extra point about what's going on in the EU, but it sounds like Australia is also moving in the same direction as well.
Yeah, good. It's a good point, Justin. Yeah, it's definitely, it looks like governments are jumping in to really to push along that security front. So we're definitely going to see more regions take on this type of action. All right, we'll jump to the next slide. Just touch on domain launches. So Australia pretty good in terms of covering the .au space when the launch of .au came out. So about 83% coverage there from top Aussie brands when you compare that to sort of an existing extension. Justin, I don't know if you had any comments there around the UK in terms of launches also.
So, yeah, we ran some sort of similar stats across Europe, and, you know, we looked at .uk in particular, and yeah, it was very high in comparison to .au for Australian companies.
Yeah.
Where we're seeing similarities between the two markets is, so if you look here on .ai, now .ai wasn't really a brand launch. It was really that it kind of almost relaunched once ChatGPT launched. And, you know, the very low brand ownership is across all regions. So the cyber squatters either got in very early and thought, hey, you know, this brand name .ai sounds cool and this AI thing might become a big thing. Or as soon as the whole ChatGPT sort of AI explosion happened, people, which is what mostly happened, people got in there quickly. And I know you'll sort of touch on this later, but when domains are easy to register and where we see volume, that's where you've got your biggest risk. And so this comparison against those two, it's very similar to other regions that we've analysed.
Okay, Thanks, Justin. So yeah, that's a good one to note in terms of across those regions around domain launches. So let's jump to the next slide. So we're just going to sort of wrap this up a little bit. It's just in terms of some important learnings. We saw with the AU launch, when domain extensions open up, we see big jumps in registrations. As a result, this can increase third-party registrations, and this leads to some of these various forms of abuse that we have seen and talked about. So it's really important to be ready from the get-go, act positively, secure your brands across these target regions, and have a clear enforcement strategy in place when things do go wrong. Take into account prior learnings, what's happened with other domain extensions, so you can reduce that risk of infringement happening again. And we've got these for CSC customers and for other prospects as well. We're here, the brand advisory is here to help you understand domain extension landscape, where you should register, what you should block. And we've got reporting that covers all of this in terms of CCTLDs to new GTLDs and across a lot of those typos and lookalike extensions that we saw within those scam alerts, as well as brand launches. So just finally, I'm just going to quickly touch on some new GTLDs because we've got the ICANN update on the round 2 of new GTLDs. I thought this was important. We've got when I looked at those malicious extensions earlier, it was about 60% of that group that I looked at were new GTLDs. So these new GTLDs are a big target for phishing and spam abuse. So you had your .xyz, .top, and .shop. So it's going to be a bit of a focus there. So this next round's coming through. It's just around the corner. You're looking at in about 12 years since that first round on the new GTLD program. So we saw around 1,200 applications, about 400 brands or so. Part of those brands, we had some big Aussie brands pick up brands too. So we saw AFL, Monash in there, among others. And we've got Google that's really sort of leading the way around brand in terms of its usage as well. So this new round, we're going to see longer length extensions come in, extra scripts, and aim to sort of provide a broader access for the global audience. So keep an eye out for more information from CSC, and also there's a new ICANN website. So I'll pass back to Justin.
Cool. Thanks, Peter. So I'm going to just finish us off with some areas to consider about mitigating some of these domain-based attacks. And before I get into that, what I wanted to do is just actually share some research that we recently published, which is in one of the downloads, if you download it, our CISO report. So we surveyed 300 CISOs across the globe, and we were asking them about trends in the area. And what we found was 98% expect cyber risk to rise over the next 3 years. So this area is not an area that's going away. CISOs are fully expectant that this is going to continue with more cyber attacks. Both the first and second place security threats in 2024 were domain-based threats. So Peter and I have been showing you some of the ways that you can either mitigate them, but we've also shown you how they're utilizing it as well. So that it's really important that you take your domain portfolio very seriously and everything around it. And then lastly, 22% of them said they had the right tools in place to deal with domain-based threats. So relatively low percentage on that front. So just to sort of, I guess, almost go, okay, well, what are these threats? So when we think about domain threats, we like to sort of say, companies are really good at their internal threat data because they hide it behind the firewall. The problem with domains is they sit outside the firewall, and therefore there are a lot of threat vectors associated with that. And this is just some examples that we've got here. So we've touched on things like typo squatting, hijacked domains, dormant domains, which can lead to phishing. It can lead to DDoS. It can lead to DNS hijacking, ransomware, etc., etc. There is a multitude of risks in this space. And on top of that, again, we've got statistics here which show that 90% of successful cyber attacks start with a phishing email. So again, everything leads back to the domain. And so all of those security areas that you can put around that domain, the better. So one of the first steps that you can help mitigate risk, and I'll just remind what I mentioned at the beginning, which is if you are using an enterprise class registrar, who is going to be a registrar that specializes in working with large corporations or brand holders and ensures that their support staff are trained well, that they have robust systems in place, they have good data governance, that they are looking at cybersecurity, you are by default probably going to get a lot more recommendations on what to do to protect your portfolio. If you're using consumer grade, this is not to denigrate these providers, but they are mass market. They are selling to small businesses, entrepreneurs. They're looking to sell web hosting and email and all these other various services. But security is not at the forefront of what they're trying to do. So they don't protect. But there are companies out there who use consumer grade, and they're really using a provider that is not built for their needs, because their domains can be hijacked, their domains can be socially engineered, etc., etc. So, and just going further into this, why use? As I mentioned, an enterprise class provider is going to be ICANN accredited. CSE is accredited with hundreds of registries across the world, be it AUDA, be it Nominet in the UK, AFNIC in France. So we work directly with those companies and we stay up to date with what's going on in those markets. So I mentioned NIS2, every single registry is changing their rules across Europe. We are talking to all of those registries about those changes and how that might affect CSE. Another great example of process is CSE will not take an order over the phone. There might be other companies like this. You need to email by an authorized user to actually place an order with CSE. We ensure that we do things, adhere to GDPR rules, etc. And then when it comes to our technology and other companies, you need to make sure that they're ISO accredited, SOC 2 compliant, ensure that they're doing penetration testing, etc. And then the final thing is about know your customer. We do a lot of work at CSE on know your customer, making sure that you've got the global support in-house in local languages, and that you're getting trained. Their staff are getting trained often. So all of us at CSE, we all have training every year on cybersecurity. And just finally, weakest link, you're only as strong as the weakest vendor. It's just reiterating the points that I've just made. If you're using a low-cost bulk provider, there's chances there's going to be chinks in their armor. If you're using a provider that this is what they live and breathe, then you're going to have less issues in the future. And this is my final slide, and it's really just to sort of wrap things up on the domain management side. Is there's 4 areas to really look after your domains. So one is you can register a domain. If you register a domain, no one else has it. So it's yours. That means it's protected. The second is you can now block domains. A great example of blocking domains is that adult block, where you can block domains such as .xxx from anybody else getting. And so those services are really complementary to registering. And then you need to secure your domains. So it's all very well having them registered, but what if they get compromised? So that's all of those things that we've talked about throughout this session about DMARC, about DNSSEC, about registry lock. Those are the things you need to put the layers around your domains to make sure that they are properly secured. And then the final, and this is for me really important, we can't register every domain name in the world. So nobody has an unlimited budget. Therefore, having a monitoring program, I think, is super important for major brands. So I would always recommend having that to complement these other services that you would need to have a good portfolio in good shape. So those are just some things to maybe take away, think through, and analyze whether you're doing all of the various things in the right way at the moment. So I think that's me done. So I'm going to pass back to Christy.
Excellent, Justin. Thank you so much. And thank you, Peter, as well.